Hi, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. It's episode number 155. The whole crew here, John, Logan, and Phil, today with you. We're talking about outdoor podcasting season, tools, how our shops change over time and whether they need to, as well as other topics that come up along the way. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. You want a glue that you can trust, and fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp time to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit Titebond.com. Now, last week on the show, we were talking about whether woodworking had a season. Mm-hmm. Which apparently sparked a nerve because we had quite a few comments on that. So I'm just going to read a sampling here. Most of them are representative by a guy named Mark, who said, I woodwork all year long whenever the mood or need hits me. Tim writes, I retired about 10 years ago at 56. I was a middle school principal, and while he was working, did most of his woodworking during the summer months. Since retiring, my woodworking season is mainly October through March. While I still try to get shop time in during the other months, other outdoor activities take precedence. Golf, yard work, grandkid activities, etc. I have a standalone heated shop, and I love spending my Indiana winter days in it. And my wife likes this also. Andrew says, first of all, I've been watching and listening to you guys for a while. I love self-flocking as opposed to man glitter, although the non-woodworkers don't get it. Second, my wife travels for work as well. Every time she leaves, I discover something the kids don't know how to do. Yep, there goes my day. Time to learn a new thing, kids. We had a couple of people from the South writing in, talking about stuff. Frank has a garage shop in North Carolina. Woodworking season is whenever he can get out to the garage, working around honeydew schedules. He has a small heater for the colder months and a big fan for the hot months. Walt lives in very lower Alabama, 20 minutes from the Gulf. We're surrounded on all sides by swamp and water. It's always wet here, so we laugh when other places talk about being humid. Temperature-wise, there may be cumulatively a month every couple of years where the tools are too cold to use much or the glue doesn't flow properly. But for the most part, it's always warm enough to work in the shop. Summertime, that's a different story. Between July and September, I try to get in the shop early, 6 to 7. I know it's time to stop when the sweat starts dripping onto my cast iron surfaces, usually about 1 p.m. I'll clean the sweat, wax the spot, and take a break till 4-ish. Typical for an afternoon shower to cool things off, then I can get back to it. And then there was... Yeah, Daniel writes, I have a luxury of a climate-controlled shop in Virginia and retired in 2017. Every day is a potential shop day. So, there you go. Although this one was funny to me. Glenn has, I'm retired and a year-round woodworker here in north central Florida. If the temps get below the 50s, I cannot work. I enjoy the podcast, but I think they run too long. In my opinion, about 30 minutes is long enough.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, just shut it off at 30 minutes. You're probably not missing anything.
Maybe we start breaking these out into 2 parts.
Yeah. Although I think it's funny that once the temperature gets below the 50s for him, he can't work. But I'm like, if it starts to get above 40, I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yep. There it is.
Shop time.
Yeah, it depends, I guess, which direction we're going. If it's warming up to 40, then it's like, oh, put on the shorts. We're going outside. But if it's like, fall and it starts dipping below 30, it's like, oh, it's too cold.
Yep. It's like chunky sweater time.
Yeah.
Yep.
But as you can see for the people who are listening on YouTube, that Logan has entered outdoor podcast season.
Yep.
And in the background, that's not a soundtrack. Those really are legit birds going on back there.
Yes, they are.
I think he's just in front of a green screen and then has like bird track going.
It's like one of those Teams meeting backgrounds.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
If I move my head really fast, you'll see what's actually behind me.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a blur.
Because what am I hearing? A wren? Is that what we got going on back there?
I can't see any of them. No idea. All I see are the giant carpenter bees flying around.
Yeah, that sounds like a wren to me. There you go. Cool. All right, here's the thing that I wanted to talk about today to start with. And it stems from the fact that we are sending out another issue of ShopNotes into the world. Mm-hmm. And I always try and come up with something, and you run into this too, Logan, of something to talk about for the editor's letter, fully knowing that other than our mothers, not many people are reading that.
Yeah.
And what I was thinking about, and I think it came about from the projects, several of the projects in there, is how a workshop changes over time. Mm-hmm. Even though a lot of woodworking content creators or books or whatever try and tell people in setting up shop kind of things that there's a one way for a shop to be.
The shop flow.
You have to find your ultimate setup where, wood comes in this door and then it goes through this step. And, it's kind of like following the maze at IKEA, and then out at the end comes a furniture project. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for anybody who's listened to the podcast for any length of time, especially in the last few months, on the saga of Logan's shop, knows that plans change.
Mm-hmm. I do. I feel like working on this issue of ShopNotes, there are a few things I'm like, oh, that would be really cool to build for the shop. But then I'm like, I know how this story plays out. And this story plays out by me building it and then never using it.
Sure.
Just for my own personal shop. Like other people, they'll use the crap out of it. But there are certain things that I'm like, that in theory sounds cool because I've done this before. Like I want to build that, and I build it, and then I don't use it, and then it goes away, and my shop changes because of that. So,
I mean, just if you get it done, that's a victory.
That's fair. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Which I think is a valuable lesson to think about, is like there's little harm in building something or trying something and then moving on from it.
No, not at all. Like, especially if all you have wrapped up into it is time and a little bit of material. So what?
Yeah. Because I also feel like it's one of those things where you could move it on to somebody who could use it, whether you just give it to them or sell it or any combination of the two or whatever, that you've learned something in the process of either making it or figuring out that, no, I don't actually use this thing, even though I thought I would. And here are 2 reasons why or whatever. I think it's an important part of the woodworking process.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking with this is like one of your goals as you were working on your shop or planning it was that you wanted to have vintage tools, mostly American made, in kind of more of your commercial/industrial scale.
Correct. Yep.
But even within that broad of a category, things have changed for you.
Yes, they have.
Right. So like, what would be your, I mean, I know you're not entirely set up in there, but like where are you at inventory wise for machines that you want to fit into this space?
Okay. 2 lathes, the big Oliver, and the Vicmark. I have 3 lathes right now, but one of them needs to go away. So 3 lathes is ridiculous. So those 2. The Vicmark is not vintage, not American made, but it's about the best lathe you can get, in my opinion. So the Oliver Vicmark, the Towsley jointer, okay,
Right.
24-inch Towsley jointer. I have an 18-inch Powermatic PM. It's not PM. Powermatic 180. So it is a made in America, 18-inch Powermatic planer.
Okay.
It's 5 horse, 3-phase, helical head in it, which is pretty awesome. I also have I have a drill press, which John saw. It's embarrassing. It is rusty. It's a Camelback drill press. So if anybody knows what that style is, it kind of has a big sweeping back on it. It is as deep from the column backwards as it is from the column forward. Flat belt driven. It needs a lot of work. So that one also, I would like it to go in the shop, but that is a 2 years down the road type thing. Okay. The 36-inch Crescent bandsaw will go in the shop. I would like one other bandsaw to go in the shop, a smaller one, like a 14 to 20 inch.
Okay.
Somewhere around there, something with a thinner, a narrower blade, so I can do curves, right? Because manhandling 2 19.5-foot long blades for that Crescent would be ridiculous. So you might as well put it in once and just leave it forever. So that's where I'm sitting right now. I mean, and I have my saw stop. Now, I did want to swap out my saw stop table saw for a vintage one, either a Tanowitz, a Crescent, an Oliver, or something like that. Yates American, maybe. My buddy Bobby, who listens to this podcast, and I know is listening to this one, had a little boo-boo. His table saw and him had a disagreement, and his table saw won that disagreement, and Bobby's down 2 tips of fingers, a third to be determined. That was just this last weekend, and it hit close to home because Bobby's one of my good friends, and I know Bob knows tools. And Bob when he texted me, he was texting back and forth pictures and stuff. I don't know how he's texting though, because he ain't got no fingers no more. I mean, he does, but I actually, oh, bad joke. Anyways, he said something that I have heard from every single person I have talked to in person that has had a table saw accident, and his exact words were, "I don't even know what happened." And I have heard everybody, I think I've heard Dylan say the same thing on his accident on the table saw. I don't know what happened. Because I think it happens that fast. That it's like you're going along, you're cutting fine, and something happens. The board drifts away from the fence. It binds and it kicks back. I don't know. Something happens, and everybody that has had a table saw accident basically says the same thing. So that Bobby's accident kind of has given me pause on getting rid of my saw stop. So,
okay, that's fair. Because I know that we've had in our shop here just this week, we've had some issues with the saw stop firing on stuff that it necessarily shouldn't fire on. Like Mark was cutting some 1/2-inch MDF and it triggered on him, and Steve was setting up another one and using the little gauge to make sure that the blade was the proper distance away, and that caused it to trigger. So
yeah, and I don't know why. To be fair, we've had problems with that saw stop firing.
Yeah, both actually, but
yeah, I mean maybe it's just the saw stops have been taught. They've been fired on miter gauges. They've been conditioned to fire.
Yeah.
Never on flesh though.
No,
I don't think so. That's been kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But the funny thing is we hear about these, table saw accidents a lot, and every time it's like, oh, now I'm looking at a saw stop. But at that point, it's too late. You've already, you're not going to, like, you
can't retroactively add a saw stop to your shop?
Yeah. Do you make the investment up front and, just bite the bullet or wait until something happens?
Yeah. I will be interested to ask Bob, like, hey, give me your opinion, like, or give me the numbers. Like, what did your trip to the ER cost you? Because when I talked to him the other day, he was going back into the orthopedic surgeon to double check his ring finger to see, make sure that what they reattached was going to stay attached, or if it had to come off.
Yeah.
Like, really, what did that end up costing him? I will be interested to hear from him, like, what that actual number is, because it's one of those things. And I know we will get those comments. I've worked on table saw for 45 years. I've never had an accident. I know. Right. But there's always that but. Right. What if you do? Like, you pay car insurance, right? And you've never had an accident.
So, yeah.
So, I don't know. It's just, but I guess that is something that has caused me to change my plans on the shop, kind of.
Okay.
So, yeah. Actually, picking up that second lathe unexpectedly had me change the plans on the layout of the shop a bit. And picking up that Oliver bandsaw, I'm changing the door size from my storage area into my shop because it's too tall to fit in a standard door. So, like, there's all these, like, shop. It's an ecosystem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's always changing. It's always growing. I actually had a memory pop up on Facebook here, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, that 12 years ago today, I had my first workbench installed in my garage in my last house. It's like, oh, look how far I've fallen.
How far I've fallen.
So
perfect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you see yourself in your shop being able to move like some tools out into the outer part if you're not using them and moving them back and forth? Or
that's my plan, because right now I don't really have a plan to have the router table will probably live in the shop. Mm-hmm. I don't know wherever I can find room, probably. But like my drum sander, I'm not planning on using that every day. It's on a mobile base. I can roll that in and out of the shop. So I'm absolutely planning on having a large portion of these tools on bases that I can actually roll out there and store out there. More so the ones that don't have cast iron tops that aren't going to rust. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because I've actually noticed that with this Vic Mark has been in my garage since November. December. Anyways, it's been in my garage for basically over the winter. It has a powder of rust on it. I wouldn't call it surface rust yet, but you wipe your hand on it and you can see the brown come up. So like,
sure,
that's just the cast iron bed. I don't want to battle that. So anything that doesn't have cast iron on it, my router table does not. It's a phenolic top router table. I could send that one out there. I could send the drum sander out there. Those are fine. I will store those outside the shop, not necessarily from a space standpoint, I don't think, but more of because of what I'm doing in the shop as far as photos and video and stuff. Like, I just don't want. I would rather have the room for lights and camera than I would the tool. So
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So where are you on? I mean, I know you're kind of focused on the shop itself. Where are you on tool restoration? Like, for example, have you heard anything about the cutter head on your Towsley?
No, I emailed them a couple of probably a month ago, seeing where they were sitting on it. Haven't heard from them, so I need to reach back out to them.
Okay.
I've actually kind of been on hold on that Towsley because I was waiting for it to get warm enough out again to sandblast.
Oh, sure.
So, because it needs sandblasted. I got Cerakote samples for the outside because I've been considering automotive paint to paint it. But then I started thinking, you know what would be really sweet is the 100% factory conditioned Cerakote on it, because that's what they did back in 1916 was Cerakote, which, if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's basically a ceramic paint. It's not original. It's really big in the like gun manufacturers will Cerakote stuff. It is about as tough as powder coating. So I ordered a couple samples of that, and I am probably going to Cerakote it instead.
Okay.
They have some air cure Cerakotes. They have some oven bake ones. Obviously, I'm not going to bake it. So, although I should have talked a little bit more in depth to Mark and Shelley Cedarblade when they were in town last week, because their brother's business is a powder coating business.
Oh, see,
I could have that bad boy powder coated.
Yep.
you just have to find a way to get it up there.
I got a 1-ton. It'll fit. But
Just do it.
yeah.
Just schedule a day.
I know. I have seen. I think it was Keith Rucker on VintageMachinery.org. He has a YouTube channel, really good YouTube, one of my favorite YouTube channels now. He had, I feel like it was a giant, not drill press, a giant bandsaw, powder coated, and he was pretty happy with it. But you have to be really careful because the powders, they don't care about machine surfaces. They're like, just spray the powder; it's going to go on there.
Yeah.
And so I think Keith on that one, he like had masked everything with duct tape, so the powder coating wouldn't stick to the machine surfaces, because the machine surfaces, obviously it's machined for a reason. You want it to be machined. You want a raw machined surface. So I don't know. It seems like it would be a pain in the butt. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, that's next. I'm gonna have a mobile sandblaster come out and do it. I was gonna do it. I'm just like, you know what? I got better things to do, like finish the dang shop. So I can have the guy come out. I'll take a couple photos, pay him a couple $100 to sandblast the entire thing so it's ready for paint. Then once it's ready for paint, I paint it and then I put it back together. Then I just gotta wait for the cutter head. I do have to. That's the biggest
you got a motor too, right?
I do have to get a motor. Yeah. The biggest I can foresee this roadblock coming. I do have to have new bearing blocks cast for it. But I kind of want to hold. I have a SketchUp model from a gentleman that's a Popwood subscriber. He was restoring a Towsley, the exact same jointer at the same time. Actually, he had just finished his, but he had a SketchUp model of the bearing blocks, the original bearing blocks that he sent me. So I'm like, jeez, all that work's already done. I just have to send this to. Actually, I'm going to send it to Keith Rucker. He's going to do all the draft angles on it for the sand mold, and then we'll send it off. I'll have a 3D model printed of it. We'll send that off to have the actual sand casting done and poured. That's going to go to Breezy Hill Foundry down in Mississippi. I'm holding on that until I get the head, because I want to make sure whatever bearing blocks I have cast are going to work with the head. So I want to make sure I have bearings here that fit on the head. The bearing blocks are sized for the bearings. We'll have them cast. I'll send them back to Keith. He'll machine out the inside, hopefully, to fit the bearings, and then life is good. I can see this roadblock coming. I never claimed that this jointer was going to be up and running within the year. I'm hoping within 3 years. So,
because that would be the downside of going with the vintage tools, is that for the most part, each one of them is a project.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's probably why when you see guys that have shops full of vintage tools, they don't really do much with the tools. they're more into the fixing of the tools, and they, because those become projects of themselves, they don't actually get to do any projects. So.
Or you see people that have a divided shop, that one side is the place where work gets done, and then the other part is kind of the boneyard where projects are awaiting their time on the lift, so to speak. Yeah.
It's actually funny. I saw, we didn't really talk much about this Powermatic planer I picked up. And it's funny because I just saw a video from Frank Howarth on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Of installing a helical cutter head in his. He has the same planer as I have, except his is a little bit older. His is a green model. Mine is right when they switched to mustard gold.
Okay.
His is one
Plotchman's
of the
yellow.
Yeah. His is one of the green ones, but he installed a Lux cutter head in it, and he was really happy with it. So mine's already in there, so I'm not down to mess around with that. So.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Titebond. You want a glue that you can trust, and fortunately, Titebond has the glue you need to get the job done with confidence. From interior glues with strong initial tack and short clamp time, to exterior glues with exceptional strength and water resistance, look to Titebond, the right glue for your next project. For more information, visit Titebond.com. So, John, how would you say that your shop has changed?
Oh, well, I have moved, so that's about it. No, just kidding. I went for a long time without a table saw, and I don't know, I got a lot of stuff done there, and then I got a table saw, and I enjoy that, but it seems like lately I haven't used it as much, and maybe that's just because I can do a lot of that stuff here at our shop. So I don't know. I've been kind of kicking around just because space wise, it takes up a lot of room, and it's like, do I get rid of the table saw and go back to not having a table saw? Or the other thing is it's a contractor saw, so it has that big motor sticking out the back, so it's harder to push up against the wall or push into a corner. So it's like, do I invest in getting the saw stop cabinet saw, and will that save room and be a good investment, and I'll use it more just because it's easier to have out and stuff. So
yeah,
that's been my latest thing. And then the other thing is I have a separate Craig router table, and it's like, do I integrate that with the table saw to save the footprint, gain back a little bit more space. So that's been the main thing, is always kind of going through the debate of, is it worth the space or not? Because I had a mortising machine for a while too, but it's just another machine that takes up space, and you can do mortises other ways. So it's like, I've had stuff like that come in and out, and just didn't make the cut as far as what it was worth for taking up space. So I guess that's the main thing, is always just having a shared space of the garage, and getting more kids and more kids' toys, and it's just it's a constant battle. So
yeah. So I forget, in your garage, is that kind of your lawn care, yard tools kind of place too, or do you have a separate space for that?
No, we have a 3-car garage, and the third stall is kind of shared as far as my tools and lawn care stuff. I have a push mower and some rakes and stuff. So that stuff doesn't take up a huge amount of space, but 6 family members, and everybody has at least one bike, and that adds up. And so you're always, especially during the summer when all that stuff's down and in and out of the garage, and so it's always just a constant battle.
Yeah.
But
would you, John, ever consider going from your garage shop to a he shed?
He shed? I don't know if I really have space for that. I guess if I went the shed route, I would just kick
That's fair.
the stuff out. I would keep the garage and kick the other stuff out.
Way to be logical about it, John.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, because I thought about that too. It's like we don't have a lot of yard space right now because there's, we have a play set that the younger kids play on, but it's like, how much longer do they need that? I mean, 2 more years, 3 more years. It's like, when can I get rid of that stuff? So, yeah, it's just always in flux right now.
Yeah,
but we'll get there. Kicking one kid out here soon, so sending him off to college, and
then they'll be
maybe I'll turn his
flies.
Yeah, then I'll maybe turn his bedroom into a little shop. Just sneak some tools in there.
It was funny. I feel like doing my seminar today, I hosted a seminar today for our woodsmith seminars that we do, and it was on setting up a turning shop. And I kind of just assumed or made the assumption that we were setting up a small turning shop, right? Mm-hmm. And it was kind of cool just standing there seeing how little I could get by with having a turning setup. Like, how small space I could do that. Like, geez, you almost give me like one of those Rubbermaid 4x6 sheds, like the snap together ones. You can almost set up an entire turning shop in there. I'm like, that's actually super cool. And like, I have that, there's a weird appeal to that to me, and I don't know why. But like, maybe I see it like as a retirement type thing. Like, hey, done building furniture. Like, let's just set up, do what I want to do, and that's gonna be turning.
Yeah.
Because what were you saying? Like 24 square feet is what?
Well, yeah. I'm standing there with that lathe and that cart, and I counted the floor tiles, which are a square foot, and it was like 6x4.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's without the bandsaw, but even
that's like a bathroom.
Get
rid of the toilet and the sink and like put everything in there, and you're good to go.
Yeah, like that's
or leave
cool.
the toilet.
Yeah, I mean,
you're good.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just it was like it held a weird appeal to me. Like, this would be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
There were several things when coming up with the schedule for the seminars for this year, and where I wanted to do that, because part of it was some conversations that we had here in the studio in talking about turning, and we've had other conversations on the podcast about what exactly woodworking is. Like, what does it mean to be a woodworker? And a lot of times, because of what we do in our day jobs, that we're trying to find and expand woodworking to a large number of people, that it ends up coming across that in order to do woodworking, you need an expansive space, a wide variety of tools. All of them must have. And I think it becomes a little intimidating for people to get started, whereas, I was watching Peter Follensby a few years ago built a new shop at his place I think he's in Massachusetts, and he's a hand tool only woodworker, and his shop ended up being kind of garden shed size. Like, it's taller just because he was making it to be something more than just a storage space, but it's still not that much space, and a number of years ago, Popular Woodworking had that Arts and Mysteries column, and I totally just lost his name. And he was talking about hand tool shops where you only needed X by X space because you just needed a workbench and kind of a place to put your tool chest, a place to stand, and like a place behind you to kind of keep stuff in process. And it was like, oh, all right. And then thinking about and getting to know more people who have specialties in woodworking, where they're just turners, like that's what they do. Or we have another seminar coming up later this year on setting up a carving shop, and, if you're into carving, that doesn't take a lot of space either. And there are ways to but really focus on what are the tools that you need in order to do the work you want to do.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if I could just start over from scratch, like what I would accumulate first or bring in first and just have a small area. But it's like, over 20 some years of owning a house, you accumulate all of the odd tools and stuff that from home projects and, specialized stuff and it just things that you don't use as much, but you don't really want to get rid of. It's like, where would you start? Like you were saying, setting up the lathe shop and 24 square feet. It's like, what would I start with? That's kind of an interesting, I guess, take on it. If you could start from scratch, how much space would you really need?
Yeah.
I think it does kind of depend on where your interest lies, right? Like it has to.
Oh, sure.
I don't think you could say, hey, my interest lies in building, Queen Anne great big high boys and stuff, and I'm going to do that in this 14 square feet. It's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you're assembling outside, but if you say, hey, you know what? I just want to make pens, and that's all I want to do. Yeah, you need under 20 square feet for that. Or if I just want to do chip carving, you need a porch rocker and a knife.
Yeah. Right.
So,
but it's like, how would you have told your past self that without having gone through the different turns and
without taking the journey,
side trips, because when you get into woodworking or you have that spark, obviously it's ignited by probably a specific project or something for your house or whatever. But then all of a sudden you step into that world and it's this wide, and you want to like see all the things. But I mean, it's like the Doyle family going to Disney. Like the park is humongous, but everybody eventually finds their favorites, and you just go hit this section. Right. And
how does it end? Where does it end? It just doesn't.
Because I would like to think that I would, if I were able to go back in time and tell myself, like, hey, just don't with this. You're not going to like it. It's not going to work out. Here are the reasons.
Would you say that?
And here are the reasons. About?
Like, what would you tell yourself that don't do it? You're not going to care for it.
I guess maybe I wouldn't put it that way. Like, the cynical part of me would put it that way. I would look at it as like, asking a series of questions or talking about, the idea of woodworking is thrilling to me in the past because of why, and then, make myself express that and then say, now, because of that, let's carry these things out to a logical conclusion, is that means you don't need to think about this. This detour is probably going to be kind of a waste of time. And if you get started with these sorts of things, that's going to put you on the path that's bringing your satisfaction to where you're feeling it right now, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're basically saying, past Phil, don't start that mortising machine.
I feel like you're talking to the way you would talk to your teenage child. It's like giving them the directions to the path, but they don't appreciate that until they've gone through it. Like, your parents did the same thing for you as a teenage, told you the same thing, and it's just like, nah, I'm gonna do it anyways. And then you get to the point where your parents are like, oh, that's what they were talking about, and now I have to explain it to my young self, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, old man, and they won't appreciate it until they're speaking to their young selves. And
Right. No, there's
So-
definitely that
so-
level of you're just not ready to learn something
Yeah.
until you have it presented before you.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally get that. But I think, and I've seen it in teaching woodworking classes, I think I get to try out various ways, that I see, some people who are real beginners in woodworking and are really interested in blah, 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 but then think that they need to do or have or whatever, acquire XYZ. And it's like, maybe you don't, like maybe you're,
Yeah.
and I don't want to do it in a way that, like with your kids, that doesn't encourage a sort of curiosity or experimentation in, like, hey, maybe you would like chip carving and that would be super cool. But I got interested in chip carving a number of years ago, shortly after I started here, and got the 2 Wayne Barton knives and, wanted to try stuff. And because I liked the way that it just kind of appealed to me on one sense. And then I started working on it and it's like, I don't know what I would do with this. Like, now what?
Yeah.
And I know other people
Well,
that's super cool for them. And yeah, man, hit it. Like, cause you don't need a lot of space for that. You need a solid bench, to kind of hold stuff up, a place to sharpen your tools, and a dustpan to pick up the little chips. Like, go at it. That stuff is really exciting to me, but it's just not who I am.
Yeah. It's funny because I would tell my earlier self, there was a long time where I thought turning was stupid. Like, well, it's like I was, and this was maybe before I realized that there's, hollow forms and bowls. So that's what I like. Like, I don't care for spindles. Like, I'll do chisel handles, but spindles are dumb. And I always thought it's like, oh, cool, you can turn rungs for a 1970s living room. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I had in my mind. And
Right.
I don't know where my shift ended up being, where I'm like, ooh, yeah, I'm going to try this.
Right.
Because I remember I had actually, probably 15 years ago, I bought a lathe from Brian Van Heverschwin that he got from the shop, and I turned a couple of things on it, spindle type things. I'm like, this is stupid, and I sold it. And now that's all I want to do.
So is turning the NASCAR of woodworking, where it's like, oh, it's just going around in a circle. That's stupid. Who cares? But then you go to like a race and you're like, oh, this is really cool. They're going fast. And
I thought you were going to say
it's
like you get a sunburn and drunk from just talking about it.
yeah, that's where I was going.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, where it's like you don't really appreciate it until you get into the nuances.
Yes.
I guess.
Yes, I would say yes.
So,
Like, you think it's easy, you just turn left.
yeah,
Until you
Just
see it's like,
keep going.
oh, it works better if I do it like this.
yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, I think so.
that was my analogy, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, that's where I was kind of going on it, is just, like being able to find focus in your woodworking hobby while still allowing for some freedom to explore.
Oh, I think you always have to be willing to explore and try new things, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm always one that it annoys me when somebody. I've been told this before. Like, I invited a couple people to go down to, like a private Jimmy Clues class with me. I'm like, you guys should come, and they're like, we've been turning for 25 years. Like, we don't need that. It's like that
Always learn
annoys
something
me.
new.
Well, yeah, that always annoys me when somebody's like, I'm a master. I don't need to. Or they're so close-minded that they're like, you know what? I've done it this way for 60 years. This is how I'm going to keep doing it.
Right.
To me, it's like, really, you're going to limit yourself by doing
Yeah.
that. Like, maybe not in whatever particular task we're talking about, but in other aspects of your life, you're going to limit yourself by saying no. So that's where it's like, Phil, maybe you should pick up Intarsia just once, just to understand.
Just give it a try.
Just give it a try once.
You never even tried it.
Yeah.
Just make the panda and be done with it.
Chip carve the panda.
Yeah.
After you're done.
Right.
Chip carve the fur.
Yep. So there you go.
Yeah.
So that would be a question. What would you, as the listeners, tell your past selves about woodworking that would get you to this place of satisfaction that you are now? Is there any advice that you could give, and what would that advice be?
What's your route to happiness?
Yeah. Right. So there you are.
Do you think, this is kind of a tangent,
Right.
but do you guys think that there's people that get satisfaction from completing projects, and there are people that get satisfaction just from doing stuff? Is that fair to say?
I get that.
Yes.
Because sometimes I just like doing stuff. I don't have to like be at get to some sort of end. I just like tinkering, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just thinking about people saying, what enjoyment do you get from woodworking? I think some people enjoy completing projects.
Right.
And having something to show from it. I think some people just like the aspect of doing something with their hands or making something, whether they actually, like me, like I really complete projects. Yeah, John kind of complete projects. Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, someday.
Yeah.
But then it's like, then what?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I finish one, that just means I'm going to have to start another one.
Yeah. So it's like,
I also think there is probably I know there is a group of people that just enjoy learning as well. So
Right.
whether or not they complete anything, whether or not they do anything, they just enjoy the aspect of learning. So
Yeah. I think along with the doing, there are the tinkerers, kind of, that the people who enjoy seeing and understanding how tools work.
yes.
So, whether they, if they weren't working on woodworking stuff in that broad category, they would, or probably are, also messing with an old car. Or, like we had a guy who was on staff here as an illustrator with old tractors. He was into vintage Ford tractors. Like in that same kind of thing. Just being able to understand how something works, why it works, and to be able to put something back together.
They're the type of people that there's always something wrong with their car that they're fixing.
Yeah.
Whether there actually is or isn't.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I think that's all fair. And I think in my own experience, I've been each one of those people where it was, you see something and it's like, wow, I would really like to make that. And you complete it and it's super cool. And it's all about the project, that there was a need. I was able to fill it with my own, skill and time and patience on it. But then there's also for me, there's been a lot where it's been a delight in the making of it, where the accomplishment is, man, I nailed that case assembly, or these hinges fit exactly the way they're supposed to, or, that carved surface has the look that I was aiming for. All right, so the free plan this week is one that I've been thinking about a little bit last couple of days, and it's for those people who, like me, think that miter is a 4-letter word. And it's a miter vise, and it was a cool project that we did in ShopNotes. And I have a number of picture frames that I need to make on my horizon here. And one of the challenging parts is clamping up a miter, because they just don't want to be clamped. They don't want to be cut accurately. They don't want to stay closed. They don't want to be clamped. Miters want to be free. This miter vise will bring your miters the control that they need. So if you want to just check that out at our show notes page, shopnotes.com/podcast, or you can find the link on our YouTube channel as well. Special thank you to Titebond for sponsoring today's episode. They have a wide range of glues that you need for a variety of your projects. Everything from kind of the specialty like veneer glues. They have a cold press veneer glue that is amazing to use, and liquid hide glue, which I continually rediscover as my favorite glue. You'll find all of those and more at Titebond.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.